Have you ever misspoke a commonly used word and in an instant everything shifts? That was me. And I will tell you, I was sitting on a call when I suddenly misspoke a word and realized everyone started to giggle. And I started to think, I don't have the credentials to be sitting in this room. And quite honestly, that was the first time I had ever thought about not having a formal education and how it might actually impact my career if I allowed it. Well, hey, I don't know how you found me or this page, but I don't think it's by accident. So let me ask you something before we lean in a little bit more. Have you ever been sitting in a room, maybe a board room or a hiring meeting or a conference, anywhere, and felt a little voice in the back of your mind start up? You know the voice. The one that says, you don't have what it takes to belong here. You didn't go to the right school. You don't have the right letters after your name or the paper hanging on the wall. Or maybe you do have the paper hanging on the wall, but you still feel like a fraud. You're still the imposter in the room with all of the real people. Yeah, I know that voice all too well. I'm Meredith Tieszen, and I've been a C-suite executive and a president of 100 million, working up to the billion-dollar international global brands. I've sat at the head of the table. I've made the decisions that have affected thousands of people's livelihood. And I've done every bit of it without a college degree. And if that might be you, I want to share some things with you today. You see, I want to tell you exactly how that happened for me, not the polished version, the real one. And I want to give you a few tips and some strategy I wish someone would have handed me when I first started out. I wish someone would have said, hey, you don't have to figure this out alone. And how to compete in a world that seemed to only reward people who took a path I didn't. If you have ever felt like there was a credential gap from what was keeping you from really leaning into the purpose of your life, stay with me because this is for you. First, I want to take you back a little bit. I want to share with you how I got started. And honestly, it started with a little seed that was planted, of course, by my mother. You see, she challenged me to find something to start on my own, to be my own CEO, to be an entrepreneur. And at 22, I did just that. And I jumped in with both feet. I started this little tea company. Yes, tea, even though I'm drinking water. And that led me on an incredible, crazy journey. I built a brand into a national company, not knowing anything, but refusing to give up. Build a website, never done it, but I learned. Branding and marketing, I couldn't afford to hire anyone, so I did it myself. Import, export goods, why not? I just kept an attitude of God would guide me, and along the way, He'd bring people into my path that was going to help me, and He did. Eventually, I would sell that company, and I would find myself saying, now what? But that didn't last too long, not even 3 months. Because when I was in rooms, I always networked. I took the meeting. I made it my job to learn about the people I was around. I was intentional in asking questions, but more than that, listening. And then I would reach out because fortune is in the follow-up. I would ask them questions about things we had talked about, really building on that relationship because I realized relationship is a vital key to long-term success. That would lead me to the corporate life. And honestly, I never thought that would be me. But 20 years later, this is my story. You see, just a few months after selling my company, I was hired by a company that was around 130 million in sales. And they were really looking to build out their sales team, their team building, leadership. And with that, they handed me half of the country for me to figure out. It took me 3 years of blood, sweat, tears, being on the road 22 to 25 days a month, every single month. But with that drive, we did something incredible and something that nobody expected. And I will tell you, the day came when it was time for me to go into the board call and report out everything that had happened in my territory. And to say that I was excited, well, that's putting it mildly. Because you see, we had done something incredible. We had more than doubled in all 3 of the key areas. And one of them was that we did 100 million in just one state. I remember sitting there waiting in the truck for my turn to go off mute because, thank goodness, there was no video conference calls back then. And I remember starting to share out all of the details, everything I had put into place, the systems, the leadership, the training. And all of a sudden, I misspoke a simple word. And in that moment, everyone started to giggle. Someone corrected me, and it was over. I was devastated. So much so that in that moment, I was the perfect Southwest commercial because I wanted to get away. I remember I wrapped up that call as fast as I could, and I took out my earbuds, well, earphones then, and I remember wrapping the wire around my fingers. My husband was sitting there. We were getting ready to go out to lunch to celebrate all of my accomplishments and the fact that I was on the board call. And I remember that I asked him if I thought and if he thought I was smart. How could 5 little letters paralyze me? But they did. And all over a slip of the tongue, a mispronounced word. But here I was, kicking off a spiral. I started thinking, I shouldn't be in the room. Maybe I should go to college. Maybe then people would take me seriously. But here's the thing, no one was even thinking that. They were just being my colleagues, laughing. And I realized that I need to fall back on something key, a cornerstone in my life, my faith. Because I am somebody who believes that I was made for a purpose, that the enemy is just trying to distract me, and that God goes before me in every room. I had to remember that I became an entrepreneur at 20 years old in my apartment in Texas with just a dream and a lot of prayers. I always had a figure-outable attitude, so why would I stop now? I had to learn how to build an infrastructure, import and export goods, build a national business with over 250,000 customers, all before I was 30. It was a slip. I was a CEO at such a young age and placed in a room with other CEOs. And I remember talking to a mentor of mine about all of this. And they reminded me, they said, Meredith, most CEOs I know were handed their position. They didn't start from a closet. And I had to learn that I needed to wear my experience, all of the scars, tears, and the hard-fought wins like a badge of honor. Because that's exactly what they were and what they still are. I learned to walk into rooms as if I belonged there because I did. Eventually, I moved into executive roles, overseeing sales and marketing at international and global companies and brands. I sat in interviews with private equity board members, founders of billion-dollar brands. And I stand proud of the fact that I went about it in an unconventional way. I don't hold back my past. I let them know immediately, because to me, it took a lot more grit and determination, consistency, persistency, and showing up day in, day out, constantly, learning to build my career than most would probably ever experience or have ever experienced. And all with more grace for myself, knowing God's plan was perfecting me in the process. And here's the thing I figured out. A degree is wonderful. It proves that you can learn in a classroom. But most organizations actually need someone who can lead in the real world. They want that life experience. And those are not the same thing. One of them you can build starting right now, even without stepping foot on campus. And I want to encourage you've already been doing it. So let's talk about a few key things that really helped separate me. First, credibility is granted when you build it. You have to take time and decide how you're going to show up for yourself. How do you want to present yourself, not just in the big moments, but in the small moments? Coaches and athletes will tell you that how you practice is how you play the game. And small moments, a lot of times, are practice runs while your team is watching. So how are you showing up? What are you doing to be intentional? First, preparation and results matter. Results are your resume. What they see you do matters more than what you study. Become the most prepared person in every room. Research, know the business, know the numbers. Find your area of deep expertise and go all in. Own a topic completely, from soup to nuts. Your reputation is built one interaction at a time. Be intentional about each one and always remember, fortune is in the follow-up. In every single meeting I went to and still go to today, I'm intentional about following up. I reach out first. I thank them for their time. I share key moments of our conversation of what stood out because of that key right there. Every position I have held at every single company has come from one of those interactions. I've honestly never applied for a corporate position ever. I have always been recommended and had a personal introduction to the CEO. I made a decision early on to prepare like nobody's business, asking them what their needs are, what do they need to see success. And then I've given them time to talk. Because of that, it's led me into key moments that I can tie the research that I've done back together. So if I go into a meeting and they're going to talk about expanding the market share, I know the numbers of their business as best I can, unless I don't have access to that, as well as the competitors. They ask about people strategy. I do my homework on every single department. What's going on? I go and ask the questions. I do the footwork because I never want to be caught flat-footed. That's not hustle for hustle's sake. That's strategy. Because for me, when you don't have credentials, your competence has to speak before you even open your mouth. Next is sponsor your way up, not mentor. Let me explain the difference here. You see, a mentor is someone who advises you. A sponsor is someone who advocates for you. I have found that a sponsor can move and open doors that you never thought were possible. Because you see, a mentor tells you what to do, A sponsor tells others what you can do. Identify one or two people with influence and give them reasons to believe in you. Be visible, deliver results, make them look good. Ask directly for sponsorship. Women, we often wait to be noticed. Stop waiting. Go have conversations. Really start thinking about how you want someone to advocate for you. Nobody handed me anything, but there were people along the way who opened doors, not because they felt sorry for me, but because I had given them every single reason to believe that I would walk through those doors and deliver. And not just make me look good, but make them look good. That's what a sponsor is there for. And I want to tell you that that one relationship can replace a lot of papers that maybe you didn't go and get, like a degree. A degree can open doors. However, a sponsor opens doors based on trust. Next is strategy. How you show up, this is key. It's so important to know who you're talking to, and it is so easy to figure those things out in today's world. With Instagram, Facebook, company website, reviews, articles written, you need to know how you want to show up and how you want to prepare when you get invited into the room. When I enter boardrooms or high-stake meetings, I am preparing because it matters. I'm also one that if you don't know something, don't pretend. Ask questions. You don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be able to say, hey, I'm not really sure what we're talking about here. Can you explain a little bit more? This is new information for me. Do you mind giving me just the Cliff Notes version of what we're talking about so I can weigh in correctly? Next is ask questions and then give them space. You definitely want to make sure that you give them space to answer everything. Now, physically, how are you presenting yourself? Your posture, your voice, your pace, how you look. You want to match or exceed. Also, key things to say. I have found that saying things like, in my experience, can really own possibly the gap that you might feel. Now, if you feel that there is a gap, you might be the only one. Here's what I mean by that. There was a meeting a few years ago. I'm not going to go into all of the details, but I remember walking into the room and I knew I was the only person in that room without a college degree from a prestigious college. I knew it. They probably knew it. I had two choices. Shrink and let that define how I show up, or decide in advance that my preparation and my results, my track record, were the only credentials that mattered in that room. I chose the second one, and I continue to do so every single time. I'm going to tell you something. Most people in those rooms are more worried about their own credentials than they are about you. So lean into that. Remember who goes before you. Next is play the long game. Build a career that compounds. You've got to stop comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 10. Every role you take is building a portfolio. Be intentional about it. Be intentional what you're adding to it. Because over time, that degree gap, it closes and your track record lengthens. Eventually, it doesn't matter where you went to school or if you did. Your story becomes your brand. And the conventional path is eventually your biggest differentiator. Last, don't overthink leaving something toxic or something that you're not aligned with. I was at a job, I left 6 weeks later because I learned that the company and my morals did not align. Only to go into another job that I was there for 6 months and started to uncover the exact same thing. Again, I stood on my principles and I left. And a lot of people said, what about your resume? How's that going to look? That's okay. Because I've learned that leaving for what you believe in is better than staying and allowing yourself to shrink to something you are not. Now, I'm not going to state who those companies were, but I'm going to be okay with saying we didn't align. And it was time for me to move on to the next opportunity. Now, but here's the thing, Meredith, and I get this often. The job posting requires a degree. Yes, and a lot of companies are quietly dropping that requirement because they've realized it's been screening out talent that they need. And for the ones that aren't, there are ways to get to the hiring manager before that algorithm rejects your resume. The gate isn't always as locked as it might look. Oh, but I'll never be taken seriously. Seriously? Seriousness is earned, not stamped. I've watched people with impressive degrees not be taken seriously because they couldn't execute. I've watched women without degrees run circles around them because they were relentless and real. Seriousness is a product of what you do, not what you studied. Meredith, should I go back to school? Should I be safe? Maybe. But I want to tell you, ask yourself honestly, is that wisdom or is that fear talking? Because going back to school is a real choice with real costs, time, money, opportunity costs. However, it might be exactly right for you. But it might also be a way of delaying the pursuit of what you actually want because getting a degree feels safer than showing up without one. I know I've felt the conflict and pull myself, but I went back to my anchor during those times and I remembered, again, who walked in the room before me. You see, my last tip is really about my faith because my faith has everything to do with how I've kept going when my path didn't make sense on paper. There's a verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, that talks about trusting God with all your heart and not leaning on your own understandings. And there were a lot of seasons where I held on to that with everything that I had. Because when the world is telling you that you're missing something, missing the credential, missing the pedigree, and yes, that was told to me once, missing the right background, you have to have something bigger than the world's opinion to stand on. And for me, it's always been my faith, and it still is. I'm not saying God doesn't call women to get degrees. Of course he does. I'm saying that for me, he closed that door and opened another one. And I stand on who I am, and most importantly, whose I am. I am the daughter of the King of Kings. I am his beloved. If he is for me, then nothing can stand against me. This is how I keep moving forward. And my prayer is that you do too. I hope and pray that this has been helpful for you. Because here's what I want to leave you with. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not disqualified. You are on a different path. And that path, if you work it with intention and you refuse to let other people's definition of qualified define your ceiling, that path can take you exactly where you're supposed to go. I know because I walked it. And it wasn't always pretty. And it wasn't always easy. And there were nights I wondered if I was crazy for not just going back to school and doing it the right way. There were tears many nights. But here's what I know. The woman who changes industries, who build things, lead at the highest levels, they don't all come from the same 3 schools. Many of them come from an unexpected source, and maybe that's you. Remember, don't leave Jesus in the car before you walk into the room. Don't shrink, don't settle. I encourage you, go be the woman other women need to see. And I pray you live life rooted. Till next time.